Hello, welcome. I'm Christina Henderson, Executive Director of the Montana High-Tech Business Alliance. Welcome to our discussion, Missoula Tech Giving Back, No School Left Behind, How Tech Can Transform Education. Today's event will focus on needs in Missoula County, but we have guests joining us from all across Montana. And even though we have a special emphasis on education today, this Tech Giving Back initiative is intended to encompass a wide range of needs in our community. This event is part of a series of virtual events the Alliance is hosting during COVID-19. You can find details on upcoming events at mthightech.org/webinars. We also have recordings and transcripts of past events, including our Bozeman Tech Giving Back event on May 20th. Today's webinar is co-hosted by the Missoula Economic Partnership and United Way of Missoula County. Grant Keir, CEO of the Missoula Economic Partnership, is going to give an introduction to help frame our discussion. Susan Hay Patrick, CEO of the United Way of Missoula County, will offer a short presentation on the nonprofit community. And then we will have two 5-minute lightning talks from Tom Sturgis at ATG, a Cognizant company, and Jan Butler at Onyx about ways their companies are giving back to the community. After that, we will hear about tech needs in the Missoula County Public Schools with Ray Cooper, Director of Technology, and Hatton Littman, Communications Director. And Katie Moore, CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Missoula County, will also share about tech needs related to her work. For the second portion of the meeting, we will open the floor for discussion with the audience. We have some Montana companies present who are doing amazing work in Montana schools. For example, Northwestern Energy has set up solar panels and STEM education classes across Missoula. Edulog is leveraging technology to bus children safely to school across the globe. Cushing Terrell is working with educators across the country to envision what schools and classrooms can look like in the future. We would ask the audience to mute your microphones until you have something to say. If you have a question or comment to share during the meeting, you can type it in the chat box or turn on your microphone and we'll see that. I would now like to turn the floor over to Grant to get us started.
Good morning, everyone. I want to start by thanking Christina and recognizing her leadership with the Montana High-Tech Business Alliance. I'm confident that today's conversation will lead to meaningful outcomes and impacts in our community, ones that wouldn't have happened without her initiative. For those of you attending from the tech sector today, I want to assure you of two things. First, we know you already deeply engage in supporting our community and nonprofits. Some of you are already doing great work to support education specifically. Some of you are investors and members of MEP. Wherever you're engaged, I'm grateful for your leadership and the work you do to perpetuate the culture of giving back in Missoula. It's what makes this a wonderful place to live for our whole community. Today, we're excited to potentially expand that engagement around critical and timely needs related to COVID-19. Second, we know that many of you and your colleagues' lives and businesses have been disrupted and deeply impacted by COVID, and for some in devastating ways. For you to be here today, ready to help others, is extraordinary, and to me reflects the spirit of being a Missoulian. If you're watching and not just listening on Zoom today, you may be able to tell from my background that I'm working from home. I'm not working from home because our office is closed. I'm working from home because my 11-year-old daughter is on the other side of that bookcase doing her schoolwork right now and waiting to start a Zoom violin lesson. There's really no way for me to return to work outside of my home until I know I have a safe, healthy, nurturing, and stimulating place to send her every day. And based on data from Missoula's own Harvard-trained economist, Bryce Ward, about 25% of our workforce is in the same boat. Unfortunately, it's not the same 25% who have jobs that allow them to work from home. MEP's mission is focused on a healthy economy and a prosperous community. Our present charge is to assist in leading our community's economic recovery. There's no question in my mind that even at the best of times, education is one of the most important issues and challenges we face as a community, and one of the smartest places we can invest our resources. However, right now, during COVID-19, addressing challenges and barriers to education may be the best way to provide a great future for our children, while also providing the fastest and smoothest path forward to a safe and equitable economic recovery that benefits every business and person in Missoula. So on behalf of the entire board and staff at MEP, we are thrilled that today's conversation is taking place, and we're honored to be a part of the conversation. And despite all of my passion and enthusiasm for the topic, I also know I am not an expert in the area of education. I know that without good guides, I am just as likely to dive into this and break something as I am likely to show up and fix something that's broken. Luckily, I have a friend, and we all have a colleague in Susan Haypatrick, CEO of United Way of Missoula County, who is deeply connected to this issue and to many of the leaders who are addressing the challenges in education. And she's been able to find a great group of experts to help us understand the challenges today and where our help is needed most. With that, I'm thrilled to turn things over to Susan.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Christina. And thanks to all of you for being here today. And thanks, Danny, for showing my slides. So United Way of Missoula County's mission is to build a better community for everybody, especially focusing on the areas of education, financial stability, and health. Ben Franklin said that the secret to a good life was to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, and those are very much United Way values. Next slide, please. We house, lead, and/or staff and fund several community-wide collective impact-focused initiatives that are decreasing childhood obesity, reducing suicide, starting children on the path to lifelong learning, ending homelessness, strengthening local nonprofits, improving outcomes for children 0 to 5 and their families, and helping our community better prepare for and recover from disasters. Next slide. Nonprofits have a big footprint in Missoula County in terms of economic impact. You heard at the last month's presentation about the impact of the sector on our state. In Missoula County alone, we have an estimated economic impact of $1.2 billion. I'm sure that many of you have heard that Missoula County has more nonprofits per capita than any other city in the country. It's not really true. It's not that hard to file for nonprofit status, but many organizations do that and then never hire staff, never raise money, never sponsor any programs. But if you count just the nonprofits that pay wages and file a 990 tax return with the IRS, that limits it to 250 nonprofits. Is that a lot? It is, but imagine Missoula without places like Missoula Art Museum, Missoula Food Bank, St. Patrick Hospital, the Humane Society, United Way of Missoula County. Nonprofits are such a part of what makes our community so vibrant and such a great place to live, work, and play. Next slide. COVID-19 has emphasized what we do well and what our weaknesses are. We have been at the center of our community's response to COVID-19, but we are also very fragile. And I will also add that we're nimble. We have the ability to move quickly. My own organization pivoted immediately at the beginning of the pandemic and was able to raise over the last 10 weeks about $500,000, most of which we've distributed. I think that's a tribute to the nimbleness of our sector. Our sector's current needs are a balance between the urgency of now and the need to transform our institutions and systems with the goal of increasing our impact and strengthening our community's resilience. It's hard with the demands of now to redesign our systems and institutions during a pandemic, but the most enlightened and forward-thinking nonprofits and systems are looking at the horizon. And that includes Missoula County Public Schools, whom you'll hear from shortly. Next slide. One of our United Way initiatives is the Missoula Nonprofit Center. It's a membership organization of 100 very diverse nonprofits. We bring them together for training, education, networking, information sharing, and we recently surveyed them about their tech needs. And as you can see, it's a mix of hardware and software, infrastructure, and one-time web help. And what do they need? They need money, they need training, and If you'd like to have a copy of the full survey, please reach out to me and we'd be happy to share it with you. You'll also hear later from one of our Missoula Nonprofit Center members, Katie Moore, CEO of Boys and Girls Club of Missoula, who is one of our sector's most talented and visionary leaders. And she has identified an issue in her organization that technology could help with. I know I gave a very quick overview of United Way programs and initiatives. If any of those mentioned resonate with you, please be in touch. I guarantee you there's a nonprofit who could use your good heads and big hearts. And with that, I'll turn to Christina.
Thank you, Susan. I'd now like to invite Tom Sturgis, Senior Vice President for Strategy and Corporate Development for ATG, a Cognizant company, to share with us some of the various ways that his company is giving back to the community. Tom?
Great. Thank you, Christina, and thank you for your thoughtful words, Grant and Susan. Pleased to be with you all and talk a little bit about ATG. For those of you who don't know, ATG is a technology company. Our largest office is in Missoula, Montana. We've got about 215 employees here, but we also have employees in Bozeman, Helena, Anaconda, Kalispell, and all up and down the Bitterroot and other areas surrounding Missoula County. Just wanted to talk a little bit about two things. One, some of our give back programs historically, and then some of the things that we're thinking about during COVID. And, you know, historically, our philanthropic mission is technology education in Western Montana. And so we have two thrusts to that. First is K through 12 education. And we view this as investing in our future, quite simply, right? You know, K through 12 education in Missoula is outstanding. But I think we could all say that in the areas of STEM, and particularly girls in STEM, that we need to step up our game, not just as a country, but, you know, locally as well. So programs around education, and particularly technology and education, and particularly girls in technology and education in K through 12 are a huge focus area for us. Also, we'd be remiss without talking about the University of Montana right in our backyard. The success story of ATG is really a success story of a partnership with the University of Montana. And so our relationship has evolved through the years and very tight, both in terms of time, talent, and treasure in working with our local K through 12 as well as University of Montana. And what that shows up in is we've got a philanthropy budget of about $80,000 a year. And I would say probably 3/4 of that goes to education and education-related goals. So some of that was, you know, targeted very specifically. So $25,000 is going to a fellowship for the future of work, trying to tie together technology with interdisciplinary groups within the University of Montana. What does philosophy have to say for artificial intelligence is a simple example of things that we're trying to look at. What does journalism look like? What does creative writing look like in future jobs, and as technology and education begin to evolve over time? And that was before COVID. And now, like many things, COVID is just putting an exclamation point on those on anything that we were previously working on. And so, you know, but it's not just money. I think that what we like to do is make sure my team is passionate about working with nonprofits and working in the classroom, whether that's with Spectrum and a SOX program with 4th graders, or lecturing at the University of Montana, or going to career fairs at Montana State. And so the team is passionate about working with youth, working with education, and so backing up not just our checkbook, but with elbow grease, and you know, we're finding ourselves on many of the boards. And by the way, I would put this out, if anybody's looking for board members, there's hard charging leaders within ATG that are looking to give back to their communities as individuals as well. Also, this year, ATG was acquired by Cognizant. So historically, we had been building up our war chest for philanthropy, and Cognizant really just accelerated that. It's nice to be part of the 194th largest company in the world. And so last year that translated to a $25,000 check for STEM education with Spectrum. And very exciting for us. Cognizant is really looking at Missoula and Montana as a real innovation. Cognizant has 300,000 employees, and they're looking to our state because we are so organized with everything from from grants to support job growth, to ability to work and collaborate with educational from K through university in unique ways. And so very much they're looking at us as a guiding light for other cognizant locations around the world. And then finally with COVID, you know, we couldn't do all the normal things that we do, which is support all the local eateries and drinkeries around town. So, but we took that and we did an adopt a business, right? And so fortunately, most businesses were able to at least maintain. And so, you know, we've provided over $10,000 to local establishments. It could be a toy store, because we've got, you know, tons of parents with kids going crazy, and just, you know, provide them some toys and educational toys for their children, to the local breweries and local restaurants, just to try to provide you know, some impetus for ATGers. And in some cases we pointed our efforts towards healthcare workers, but to help keep as many restaurants afloat, and just make sure that everybody knows that there's people that are thinking about them and trying to help. And now we have two things. We have a pandemic and we have social unrest. So we're, you know, looking at different ways that we can tangibly work with community on each of those. And I think our ability to be virtual and leverage technology platforms, the coined phrase is now more than ever, these things that we have been doing historically, we need to double down and be able to provide better technology solutions for education. And as things hopefully begin to get back to normal, we can go to some of our old things that always worked for us in the past, but we're going to need to invent some new things going forward. So I'll probably cap it at that, but I appreciate everybody listening to a little bit about ATG and Cognizant. Christina, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, Tom. Now we'd like to invite Jan Butler, the VP of People for Onyx Maps, to say a few words about what their company is doing.
Tom is always a tough act to follow. Anyway, you guys, he has really set the bar over there for other companies to step up to, so appreciate that. And I'm anxious to hear more about what you're doing for the restaurants, because I'm also concerned about, you know, our people were eating out quite a bit, and when we were working from home or not. So some of those things are kind of interesting to me, as well as the social unrest part as it relates to Missoula. I would be love to connect with you on that topic as well. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, I think people do know, but Onyx we're really a kind of a mid-stage startup focused on outdoor maps to empower outdoor experiences. We started as a hunt company, but this year we launched our second product into off-road. We are one of the lucky ones. Our business has continued to do well and thrive through the COVID-19 situation, with the push for more people to want to be outside. We're at a point where we're going to pass the 200 employee mark within the next month. And right now, the majority of our people, except for a few essential IT folks and so on and so forth, we're working from home, including hiring and onboarding remotely. And we do have a number of people in the queue to move to Missoula as soon as the moving truck can get to them in places like New York City. So we do have that going on. The majority of our employees are located in Missoula. We do have an office in Bozeman, as well as remote employees throughout the United States. Onyx has actually a strong history of really grassroots volunteerism and a donation program. Pretty scrappy. Every employee gets 8 hours of volunteer time a year. And in the past, we've done things like Habitat for Humanity, Clark Fork River cleanup, people volunteering at local kids camps, Candemonium. And then really interesting, this last Christmas, we had a lot of people who had relocated into the Missoula area and were alone on Christmas, and they banded together and went and served food at Poverello Center, which I thought was awesome for a number of reasons. But people weren't alone too. As far as donations in the past, we've kind of had a wide variety of things. Obviously, we give a lot to the food bank. That's a big thing for us. Women in tech is one of our focus areas. And also, we partnered in Bozeman, for example, with Matt Brewing, who created a beer in the honor of our 10th anniversary. And we donated $1 for every pint served and directed toward a public land initiative. In the COVID-19 situation, I think our employees feel very blessed that they are in a situation, not that our workforce hasn't been impacted. We have had people who have, had their spouse laid off from another tech company, or in some way their work has been impacted. But so one of the things that came up is we started talking about, hey, what can we do in addition to our regular giving program? And so it came up to donate PTO. So we had employees donate up to a week of PTO, and that money was directed toward 3 agencies, United Way of Missoula, Missoula Council on Aging, and the HRDC in Bozeman. Plus some of our remote employees gave to food banks in their local area. That was a pretty popular program. I think that, if I would say anything about our giving and our corporate donation program, it is kind of scrappy and small. I actually think we should get it a little bit more directed, kind of figure out what our key things are, if it's, STEM education or whatever that is. So I think that as we grow, we're moving to that. I think we are, as a company, just in general, for volunteer hours or donations, we're trying to figure out how to address the social unrest situation, which while Missoula is not quite as diverse as some other people are still deeply affected by what's happening in the world, so in our country. And so I think it's very healthy in an organization, and Tom could probably say this too, if you can help your employees activate, like get active and figure that out. I think it's a healthy thing. So that's what we have going out. I'm super excited to hear about the education part and going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Now we'd like to turn the floor over to our partners in education. First up, we have Ray Cooper, Director of Technology for Missoula County Public Schools, and Hatton Littman, Communications Director for Missoula County Public Schools, to talk to us about technology in the schools. All right. Are your microphones on?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, now you sound good.
Apologize, the best Zoom faux pas ever. Good morning. It's nice to see some friendly faces out there. I'm Hatton Littman. I'm the Communications Director for Missoula County Public Schools, where our mission is to ensure that every student achieves their potential regardless of their circumstances or ability. Just a quick highlight about Missoula County Public Schools. We are the largest school district in Missoula County, yet we are not the only school district in Missoula County. There are actually 11 independent K-8 school districts. So one thing that is really common is people will think, Hellgate Elementary, that must be part of the same school district as the rest of the world. That is not the case. We have 3 urban high schools, 1 rural high school, and 1 alternative high school. We have 3 middle schools, 9 elementary schools, and 1 early learning center. We really do value being a forward-thinking and high-achieving school district, and you can see that we really believe in a 21st century educational culture. That said, even in times like these, our teachers and our students experienced great challenges in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to shift to a fully remote learning environment. With that, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Ray Cooper, who will take it from here.
All right, good morning. Like Hatton said, I'm Ray Cooper. I'm the Director of Technology for Missoula County Public Schools. And boy, a great time to be a tech director in the midst of a global pandemic. So I will certainly share some of the challenges that Missoula County Public Schools has endured during this remote learning, the shift to remote learning. First of all, that shift to remote learning in about a week's time was definitely a challenge. We needed to prepare our teachers. Teachers needed to figure out what curriculum worked online. We had to engage with software companies about purchasing more licenses or obtaining licenses for free to be able to shift to remote work. We had to prepare our students and our families to make that big shift. And we had to distribute devices to our students in about 1 week. The next thing that was definitely a challenge would be just student access to devices and internet. We have a lot of devices in our district, but we don't have all mobile devices. So we have a lot of computer labs, especially at our high school level. So we needed to distribute mobile devices like laptops and Chromebooks, and additionally provide some hotspots for internet access for our students. At the same time, the whole world was trying to obtain these devices, so that was a bit challenging. We have a definite need for reliable internet access, especially in East Missoula, where we serve about 160 students. We also had some challenges for our staff to have access to laptops. Not all of our staff devices across the district are laptops, some are desktops. So we needed to make sure our staff had laptops with webcams so that they could deliver instruction to students and see their students, as well as staff needing reliable internet. They live in different parts of Montana and or Missoula County, and not every part is covered by really great internet. Another challenge would be communication. So in thinking about having teachers and staff members call families, they were using their personal phones and masking their phone numbers, and then having some trouble connecting when parents or families didn't answer because the call is showing a blocked caller ID. So that was definitely a challenge. And then communicating with our families that are English language learners, we had to find some creative software solutions in order to be able to text communication, COVID-related updates in their native language. We've incurred some educational software costs. A lot of ed tech companies provided free software subscriptions through the summer, but we know that we're going to they're going to stop making those free for the fall. And then we also have some legislation in Montana, the Online Student Data Privacy Act, where we needed to make sure that our teachers weren't using all sorts of ed software without getting those data privacy agreements in place first. And then last, equity. We always hear about the digital divide with devices and internet access, but it does go a bit deeper than that. Our students and families were not accustomed, especially our youngest learners, they were not prepared to be productive and learn online. So this is a big shift in education and a big part of the technology gap that not everyone is talking about right now. So I just talked about a slew of challenges that we faced in this short amount of time. And so how can you help MCPS? These are some of our immediate needs. To be able to provide every MCPS student with a Chromebook, we need about 4,800 more devices. That equates to $1.1 million. So that's definitely a big ask, but it would definitely help us thinking about the learners that may need to still be at home next fall or whatever COVID looks like in August. But we know that a portion of our population will probably still need to be at home because they're medically fragile or they have someone in their family that is vulnerable. It would also, being one-to-one in this district would help because then we're not sharing devices and having to clean them in between student use. We know that we have families that need reliable internet, and we know that there is a specific need in East Missoula where we have about 160 students. We know that we are going to need more funding support for software because moving curricula online definitely has a cost. We know that those resources were free, but they're not going to be free next year. So just thinking about our student libraries, we're not going to be able to have students, I predict that we're not going to be able to have students checking out books in our physical library. So we're going to have to move a lot of those, we're going to have to shift to ebooks. And ebook subscriptions, just for one platform I was looking at, for example, was $30,000 for a district. So there are many, many more things I could talk about, but those are some of the immediate financial needs. And I believe Hatton's going to talk to you about other ways you could help.
Thanks so much, Ray. So other ways that people already help, and I appreciate that Grant and Susan both mentioned ways that the tech sector is already engaged in our schools and our buildings, but certainly long-term engagement with students via mentorship opportunities, job shadows. I want to give an example. I know that Cushing-Terrell was mentioned by Christina in terms of their leadership in education and design, but we also have a significant number of Cushing-Terrell employees who act as mentors to our high school robotics team. We also have ATG employees that are doing it and a variety of others. Keep in mind that in the state of Montana, the Missoula County Public High Schools robotics team is the only first level competition team in the entire state of Montana. So having those high-tech mentors who are doing that long-range relationship building is a big deal for our students. We have technology employees serving as mentors in our coding clubs. We have senior projects that every student at Big Sky High School completes, and oftentimes there's a business mentor involved there. And our finance pathway and our health science academy at 2 of our high schools also have extensive relationships between students, teachers, and businesses. So those are other ways you can get involved. I just want to highlight and put something into perspective. Ray mentioned that to close that gap and get to one-to-one devices would be $1.1 million. Our tech levy is just a little bit larger than that. And our tech levy is what has to pay for everything our district does with regard to technology. So that's internet service, devices, software, professional development, things like that. It helps put into perspective what it would take to close the gap on that 1.1 million. There's not a lot of extra dollars hanging out there. I also want to highlight that Missoula County Public Schools is also giving back in ways that you heard our tech executives talk about during the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders and closures. Our administrators within the school district contributed to what we called our Days Pay fundraiser, and every administrator contributed funds, which we sent to the United Way Emergency Assistance Fund, and we were really proud to do that. I just mentioned the ways that local businesses have been engaged, and I just want to highlight them again and say thank you. We so appreciate it. And I want to say the thing that we know in education, and I think everybody knows, is that high quality education leads to that high quality standard of living in our community. It helps Grant attract businesses to our community. It helps all of you keep your employees happy and keep our workforce strong and coming into all of your workplaces. If anybody wants me to share these slides, I can. This is a quick look at how you can find us on the web, how you can find Ray or I via email, and we're more than happy to follow up with any of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hatton and Ray. Now I'd like to feature another one of our community nonprofits that is engaging kids in the community at this important time, Katie Moore from the Boys and Girls Club of Missoula County.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate seeing the presentation, especially from the school district. And I want to echo everything that they're saying. And I really, first off, want to thank a lot of you all. You all are really great supporters of us and all of the nonprofits here in the community. I have been in Missoula for about 2 years, and this is the most giving community I have ever lived in. And it is really powerful to work in this role here. So thank you for taking the time and sort of hearing about all of this, and thanks for organizing this event. So I can definitely talk a lot about I'm worried my technology is going to go out at any minute because I'm sitting in my nonprofit office, and sort of specific needs we need, right, in the nonprofit world with technology. But I was sort of thinking, and when talking to Susan, thinking about sort of broader infrastructure changes that we could potentially take on that would potentially have a really big impact on our young people here in Missoula. So Boys and Girls Club, just so you know, our mantra is sort of when school's out, club is in. And so when, kids spend 80% of their waking hours not in school. And so we're really here to provide an enriching experience for those young people when they're not in the school building. And so in thinking about our young people, we have a lot of out of school time youth programs here in the community, and our kids are sort of being served by a variety of them, right? Our kids are going in and out of all of our doors every day. And so we're sort of thinking about how do we create a data technology infrastructure where we can sort of house information about young people. And I recognize that there's a lot of concerns about FERPA and legal aspects of this coming up. But when a young person comes into our doors, we're starting at a blank slate with learning their past, learning their unique circumstances, you're learning what works well with them and how to develop relationships with them and how to get them what they need every single day. And if we were able to share information among the different youth-serving nonprofits here across Missoula County that we're all seeing the same kids, we could sort of move faster in our efficiencies for developing relationships with young people and getting them the resources and supports that they need to live really thriving, successful lives. And because we don't have information sharing among all of our organizations right now, we're sort of doing the same legwork, right? We're hiring staff that have to find out the exact same information about all of these young people. And then it takes months to get to a point where we could get to in a couple of days with access to this information. But of course, this sort of extends in sort of the best scenario well beyond out of school time youth serving organizations and nonprofits, right? Our young people oftentimes are in the mental health services, they potentially are in juvenile justice services, legal services, housing services. And so if we could sort of develop a system, a data infrastructure, and this obviously requires technology and sort of really knowledge within this world of how best to do that, to share information about our young people across all of those different sectors, we would be able to work really in tandem as a community to get that holistic support that we need for our young people to build those really solid long-term lives. And because we're sort of all, oftentimes we at Boys and Girls Club feel like we're operating sort of in a silo, it can be a little bit more challenging to figure out how do we develop success for each of the young people that we serve at our club? Because we know that every single child needs something different and has access to different resources, has different previous experiences. And if we could do stronger information sharing through data and technology, that would be a really powerful tool that we at Boys and Girls Club would really love to see. And we see it happening sort of across the country. Providence, Rhode Island has what they call after zones, and that is them sharing data about young people across all of their different after school programs. So we're seeing it happening despite the concerns about FERPA and sort of data privacy concerns. But it's an area that I think is really interesting to think about and requires sort of someone to kind of be the person who creates that foundation and creates that trust among the different organizations. So that was sort of an area that I think would really help increase efficiency and sort of cost savings so that we can take our really limited resources as a nonprofit and put them towards serving more young people. So I want to stay sort of within the time frame, but I think that that's an area that's always kind of going through my head. And when I thought about the audience here, I think that that's unfortunately, I don't have all of the answers to building that, right? It takes kind of a village to create that system. But having those conversations and thinking about not just in the immediate and what COVID is doing to our young people right now, but what does this look like in the long term, and how do we stop sort of letting a lot of young people fall through the cracks of our systems? How do we create that net to catch every single young person?
Yes, thank you, Katie. And one of our hopes for this time today is that just by bringing these different groups of people together, those in the nonprofit and educational communities, our economic development partners, and our tech companies, that we can together come up with some innovative solutions to tackle some of these new challenges that are coming up. I'd now like to turn the floor over for discussion with all of our audience members. So based on what you've heard so far, we're interested, what are your thoughts or questions today? And feel free to just turn your microphone on if you would like to say something. And you can also type things into the chat.
This is Jan. I would like to get the public schools deck sent to me, because I'd like to send that over to our Onyx Gives group. I think that maybe where we're under-resourced or where we haven't figured out is the volunteer, tech employees to come over and help schools, nonprofits, that sort of thing. And even on the nonprofit space, some of the help that I understand is needed is anybody who's probably fairly technology savvy could do. And I think there would be some energy in our organization to do that. And so I just want to figure out how to make that connection.
Yes,
and maybe it's also talking to our group too.
Okay, we can definitely share those slides. And also we have a slide that we'll share at the end of the program that has the contact information for all of our speakers today. So that'll be up at the end of the discussion as well. Thank you, Jan.
Christina, Susan, I don't have a question, but Tom, I just want to follow up on our email exchange of a few months ago, and we talked about your employees' potential interest in serving on boards. And I hear something like that and I want to jump because, as I said, there are nonprofits that could use good energy, good thinking from your sector. And we had talked about a board boot camp, which is a presentation that we do that talks about board responsibilities, what you can expect as a board member, and what is expected of you as a board member.
Right.
Geared for folks who might be new to board service. And if you wanted to talk about a virtual version of that, I'd love to reconnect on that.
Absolutely. Leadership in any field is critical. And I think that, business leadership being bounced against nonprofit leadership, I think it's just a win-win for all parties. So yeah, happy to help any way we can. We have probably 20 or 30 people, I think, that are qualified to be on a board, that are hard chargers and passionate. It's just about finding the right person and the right passion.
This is Amelia from the Montana State Library talking, and I'm sorry I had to come in and out of this meeting, so maybe this was discussed in more detail. And this maybe isn't directly related to anything that I heard in the meeting so far, but just to let you all know, talking about tech, the State Library has used a portion of our CARES Act funds to purchase hotspots, lending hotspots for public libraries across the state. I don't have a complete list of which libraries are participating, but I am going to put into the chat box the website for a hotspot lending program. And they're being shipped out right now, and libraries are still setting them up, but I know that the digital divide is really being felt these days, and sometimes being able to take home that little hotspot can be really, really helpful for anybody. So those are still being made available, but just to let you know, to talk with your local library, see what resources they have, because even though they might not be physically opening, although some of them are opening up recently, there is a lot there that nonprofits and other people working with families and people affected by COVID could potentially leverage and use. So sorry if that's not directly relevant to anything you all have discussed, but just as a reminder that another source of potential internet that people could take home.
That is a great resource. Thank you, Amelia. And we will share that link when we send out the video and PowerPoints and other resources from the program today.
Yes, and if anyone has any questions about it and would like to connect with the library, please do just email me. I'll put my email in the chat box as well. I'm more than happy to connect anybody with the library and see what you're interested in. So.
Yes, thank you. And totally relevant. Our libraries are such a huge source of support and tech, access to technology for young people and adults across the state. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Christina, this is,
go ahead.
This is Grant. I have maybe a question for Hatton and Ray. Just thinking about Jan's offer to forward the slide deck and think about ways her employees could volunteer and support this. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the right scale at which to try to coordinate things. And by that, I mean, you've identified that you need $1.1 million for devices so that every child would have a device. My understanding in talking to you is that these devices are Chromebooks. And I guess my observation or talking to teachers is that one of the challenges once students have these devices and they're in a remote place is they might not know how to use them yet. And so getting them up to speed on using the device in a way that is streamlined enough that it's not another barrier to their education, but it really empowers them. And so if you had volunteers willing to help, maybe in summer programs, train kids to use these devices, so by fall they're ready to go back to school knowing how to use them and confident, is that best deployed, that volunteer work, at the district level, at the teacher level, at the school level? Where is the best place to sort of engage to make that change or to engage in that kind of work?
It's a great question. So one of the reasons we use Chromebooks, especially with our youngest learners, is we have this really nifty program where they can hold up a QR code badge to a Chromebook and it automatically logs the kids in. So training of our youngest learners is definitely best coming from our actual classroom teachers because they want them to use the devices in a specific way. But I can see the programs that students are attending this summer in preparation for our ramp up back to school. That would be an amazing partnership with volunteers in teaching our students how to use the devices appropriately. Hatton, do you want to jump in with any ideas you have?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So we are racing to be able to share with our staff and with the public some of our return to school plans, which, as you know, have to be incredibly flexible. But one of those plans includes up to 2 weeks of time in a school prior to school starting with classroom teachers, and that's for our K-8 schools. And in those 2 weeks, the students who are being nominated to attend are largely those students who we clearly are seeing a gap in skills and content knowledge or a gap in engagement during this online learning period. And so that ramp up period is the best time to have the extra devices, do some of that really intentional skill building. And I also want to highlight one thing that we're using as a guiding document for our teachers in instruction is the idea that we're focusing on accelerating learning, not remediating learning. And that is a really important philosophy. It may seem silly, but Grant, it'll give you a little peek behind the curtains, right, about what educators think about. if you want students to quickly get to their goals by the end of that academic year, the best way to do that is to expose them to real grade level skills and content and scaffold them and support them where they might be missing something, rather than say, oh, for September through November next year, we're just going to do a review of everything we missed last year. That will just keep students behind. And so we're really focusing all of our thoughts on accelerating learning, not remediating learning. And so in those 2 weeks of ramp up, one of those core scaffolded skills is going to be that productivity and ability to use that technology tool. So I would think the scale of when we need the device and when we need that training is in early August.
Susan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was thinking about Tom's comment about the importance of organizational leadership, and something that has plagued the nonprofit sector and is changing slowly, but probably not fast enough, is the constant pressure to reduce overhead means that we have underinvested in our own capacity historically as a sector. And the importance of folks like you serving on boards is that you can educate your fellow leaders about technology and investments in training and technology as an essential service that can only increase the capacity. And when we are at a time when we are called upon to do more, many nonprofits feel the pressure to try to do more with less, which is a myth. You can't do more with less. And just as you consider nonprofit service, or as you serve on nonprofit boards currently, you would do a real service to those organizations by educating people about, to not live the myth of scarcity, and to encourage investments in technology as a way to increase capacity and impact.
Thank you, Susan.
Hi, Christina.
Oh, hi, Elaine?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Elaine Higuera. I'm the tech director at Target Range School. We're on the border of Missoula County. And our little schools around like Bonner, Clinton, DeSmet, our tech budgets, our tech levy is $20,000 a year. We serve 600 students. So I know MCPS needs about $1 million, but investments of 5,000 to 10,000 in our little schools would make a major difference, a major impact. We are in the same boat as they are. When we send the devices home, which we have never had to send home before, we had to implement filtering because you can't send devices home with kids without a filter on them. Those sort of things were major budget impacts that were unexpected, and unanticipated. So the COVID crisis has really impacted the smaller schools around the county. And so, and you're thinking about making a contribution, remember the smaller schools, because you get a lot of bang for your buck. It would be life-changing in our budget to have an influx, unexpected influx. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Elaine. And maybe the floor is still open for, general comments and questions, but maybe I'll transition us in these last few minutes of the meeting into identifying ways that we could be working together in the future as partners to do some matchmaking of sorts between schools and nonprofits that have needs, and companies and tech partners and others in the community who might be able to help meet them. So Elaine, if you could, we can connect after this meeting and we can get more information about your needs at Target Range Schools as well. But our plan for the High Tech Business Alliance is to start adding a section of our newsletter that's devoted to tech giving back, where we could both highlight opportunities that are out there that, somebody might see and be able to step up and help meet that need. And also we could facilitate some programs and things that have been discussed earlier, but we would welcome other suggestions today for how we could serve all of you in keeping this initiative and the momentum up in the future, so that we don't have a nice conversation today and then not revisit it, but what could we be doing as an ongoing process?
Yeah, it's funny how these things work. I was just having lunch with two of my top leaders at the trough that have kids that are just about ready to hit the school system and are eager to impact their community. Dang. So I'll put you in touch, Elaine, with them, and we'll see if they can represent some of your interests with our philanthropy group.
This is Amelia again.
You'd be doing me a favor.
Sorry, this is Amelia again with the State Library, and I'm totally shooting in the dark here because I'm not actually super familiar with the nonprofit world and how partnerships necessarily work, but just something that a lot of libraries have been taking advantage of are the COVID relief funds from the Department of Commerce. There's like a 2-page application that any 501c3 can apply for. So a lot of libraries are applying through their foundation or their Friends of Library group. And you just have to say what you're planning. I think it's grants of $10,000, and it can be used for anything COVID related. It's a very, very easy application, apparently. So a lot of our libraries have applied for that and gotten it and used it immediately to help with services. And so, I mean, not sure what the status of schools are, but if, you know, a nonprofit wanted to partner with the school and kind of inject that money through the grant, I don't know if that's actually possible or if that's even realistic, but and you probably already know about that, but just in case you didn't.
Thank you, Amelia. That's a great resource to explore. And we could also try to create a resource list if folks know of other things that nonprofits and schools might tap.
Yeah, and I'll try and find that link and put that in the chat box. Apparently it really is like a super easy grant application, especially compared to others that people have done. So let me try and find that.
Christina, this is Grant. I guess what I would volunteer just as a perspective from MEP, 2 things. One, on that funding, there's, you know, $1.2 billion went to the state for COVID relief and impacts. Much of that money has not yet been designated, and there are conversations at the leadership levels in our community regularly about how to sort of advocate for where that money should be spent. So one thing I would ask is just if business leaders would be behind encouraging the state to put more money into education, I think that would really help give elected leaders more confidence that there would be support for this. And so I can certainly carry that message, and it'd be great to reach out to people who participated today to support that if and when that time comes to deliver that message. We would be happy to keep this group updated via you, Christina, on how those programs are evolving and changing. In addition, I think we'd love to play a role of whatever feedback you get from your members and partners. For example, I know Jason Williams was on this call today at some point. I don't know if he still is, and I know he has a fundamental understanding of sort of why and how there might be internet challenges specific to East Missoula, and they've done a lot of work to stand up hotspots, and maybe they'd be interested in partnering with the school district to find ways that they might be able to do something in that area. I don't know that, but we'd be happy to do whatever we can to look at some of the specific problems and try to match up the interests and capacity of various tech groups to figure out how to support those.
Thank you, Grant. I'll ask Danny, Danny is going to share a slide that has the contact information for our speakers today. So that'll go up on your screens if you want to grab that. And we will also share this information via email to everybody who registered today. And let's see, the chat. Okay, and then Amelia also shared the grant application page for the Department of Commerce COVID relief. So this is just hopefully the start of a series of ongoing conversations. So if you have a great program or idea, even if it comes to you after the call is ended, please reach out and share it with us. We would love to continue this effort of supporting tech companies and giving back to our community at this time. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers today for sharing your time and expertise. Thank you for all of our everyone who's doing so much to give back to our community at this time. We really appreciate your efforts. Everyone have a great day.